unmute. Hey.
That's
Now,
right. I'm
you're
muted
still
on
muted.
StreamYard. So that introduction went completely. I promise you that was the best introduction that I've ever done, but it was muted.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually, what I really did say was that introduction was not crafted by AI, but here we are, February 13th. It's a Thursday. Good morning. Welcome to the Dev Talk Show, where we're going to talk about and see AI help us produce content or just, well, the show title says crafting AI driven show title. So I'm really excited to see what that's about. And I'm here with Rich Ross. Good morning, Rich.
Hey, morning, Chris. Yeah, and that as I said in the description, that title was created. Well, I guess on YouTube it's down.
Yeah, right.
That title was created using some generative AI just to try some things out.
Right.
But yeah, they think it's one of those things we struggle with. You know, hitting the button to go live is easy compared to what are we going to call it? How are we going to describe it? And do that all in the 10 minutes leading up to the show, right?
Yeah,
So
production
maybe there's some
details,
tools
right?
that we can make it easier. Yeah. Well, we want people to find it, and we want people to get interested in what we're doing. So it is important, certainly.
Yeah. Oh no, certainly. It's interesting to see who, YouTube is an interesting place because I do believe this. I guess I don't can't point you to anything. Is that besides bringing you back to the channels that you're interested in, things that you seem to be watching maybe a lot of, you're not clicking away from right away. Every once in a while, I get surprised by a channel that it shows me, and I actually do say like, oh, okay, let me see what this video is about. And then I'll watch it and I'll say like, oh, that was pretty good. And then I'll look at the creator and they have like maybe 10 subscribers and 4 views. And I go, huh. So it's, certainly YouTube is saying, here's somebody starting out that we think fits the profile of what you're watching. But it's all a big mystery sometimes as to how does anybody find what it is you're working on. So,
Yeah. Oh, shoot. Sorry. That was private chat, and that's not where I wanted it.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I want this. There we go. Sorry, I looked at it funny. Like, that's not how it should go if I posted. So,
Yeah.
there you go. We got a couple of people
All
joining
right.
us here as we get started. So, welcome. One thing. So we do have a project. We're going to start from scratch. Just like
Okay.
you all might, and we'll go down that record. But if you are starting from scratch, and let me share my screen here so you all can see. Nope, not settings. Present. And that one. Share. Nice. Cool. And this is from the dev blogs. If you're starting out with AI, and we've started over the last couple of shows kind of showing how to get started with things like GitHub models and talking about just in general what you need to think about, and having conversations around AI for your applications. This series is essentially a set of videos and courses for those who are for beginners, and it's focused on the .NET people. It's not focused on Python or other languages like some of the other things might. So this is really a way to get started. There is a video, and I think there's even a GitHub repo. Yep, clone the repo to get started. So this would be a place to, if you're, want to go off on your own and start to figure out how to build AI for your own applications. This is something the .NET AI community stand-up did recently. I think it was this blog post within the last few weeks. So something here to go check out and be able to get started, much like we're going to do here.
Okay, I see. So this is okay. So this is similar to the repo we showed last time. I think it was last time. But that repo is generative AI for beginners. So I mean, it's still in the Microsoft organization.
Yep.
It just doesn't have the .net at the end. And so this one focuses on .net usage, where the other one I think is more of a generalized course, right?
Which I think I'm pretty sure if I just do that, right? If I go,
oh yeah, that's all it is just yep. because it was interesting. I said, wow, the repo, is this, I'll tell you what first I thought, as I said, did they kind of like reimagine this? Is it being rebooted? They certainly do look very similar. So yeah, I'm going to make sure we get this blog post in the show notes here.
Yeah.
And
yeah, because I think this repo is mainly focused on, if we look at the, let's see if this is working here. No, that's the wrong one, right? It didn't zoom in for you, did it?
no.
Oh, because it's this. There you go. Okay. So yeah, if you look here, we're Jupyter, Python. Those are the things that this repo, the one that's not the .NET one, is really focused on. Whereas this one over here, it's basically all C#. A little bit of Python, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Did I? No, we're good. Okay. Wow. So real quick, my dev box, right? My dev box is sitting in a window. It's a 1920 window so that we can show it the right way. And Zoom It is running inside of that dev box as opposed to running on my host machine. And sometimes when it does that, it, when I do like, hey, just let me draw on the screen, my video locks up. So then I get nervous, especially when I don't hear anything, that something's going wrong. But I'm getting used to it because I had to play around a little bit to get it to work. The command has to be different in the dev box in this mode than it has to be on my host. So highly recommend. It's in the Power Tools now. Just install Power Tools, turn on Zoom It, and those same cool features running as well.
Yeah, I actually installed Power Toys recently. Is it Power Toys that has Zoom It or Power Tools?
It's Power Toys. Sorry, I said it wrong.
Because I know they're different things. So, well, maybe I'm sorry. Maybe they're not different things. Just, but yeah, windowing and layout.
Power Tools is.
I could be wrong about it's early. But no, the point is that yes, there's some things in there that I've never really, like mouse without borders, I should be using and I don't.
Love.
I know people do. Borders. I know people.
So that's how I'm doing it, because I have a separate PC that does my video and audio, and I basically have a HDMI out from that USBs into my other machine that I can then say, well, that's a camera now, right? And I can use that camera for just like we're doing here. So yeah, I couldn't do it without, there would be way too many keyboards on my desk if I didn't have that. But yeah, I digress. Sorry, but this is what Dev Talk is about, right? How you do these kind of things, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I was unaware that Zoom It was just added. I really was. I was totally unaware of that because Zoom It is a reflex action for me on systems. I don't just use it here on this show. I use it at work as well, especially because in this day and age, we're doing more, teleconferencing and so on. So I very often am zooming into bits of documentation and so on, or code or something. But I did not know that the Power Toys, the recent update, has added Zoom It. That's cool.
Yes, and I think so. I might have said it on this show, but might have been one of those mornings where I did a show on my own, or I did a show where you kind of joined me a little way through. But I do remember talking about it because when it was recently added, which was not that long ago. The other thing I will say that I've really started to love over the last week or so is multiple desktops.
Yeah.
And I saw you do this at a presentation where hey, I've got my slideshow here and I'm going to do this. And now I got a separate desktop for code. And I've been doing that a lot because I'm leaving all of my email Teams in that other channel. So I don't see it. I don't get distracted and I can focus. So love that.
The other thing you can do is you can leave your slideshow in full screen mode on a desktop. Often you can do this, and then you can have your work on another desktop, and then there is a Windows shortcut key that just brings them back and forth. And I've done it's a different shortcut key from the one that moves a window from monitor to monitor. It's a different one. This is a switch desktops, And I've used that in presentations because this is getting better, but there was a time when almost every projector system, when you switched out of full screen mode, would go into this flickering, mode where it would do like boom, 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 boom. And I just wanted to how do I just, and so that was it. I can't actually I don't know if I remember. I don't remember what the shortcut key is now, but
I can tell you it is Control, Windows, and then the arrow left or
and
right,
then the
depending on
arrows.
which
Okay.
desktop you're in. Yeah.
Okay, because the one that I've got muscle memory on now is the Windows Shift arrows, which is moving Windows back and forth. It's not moving desktops. Yeah. But once you have a second desktop in place, then now I can use Control. Yep, and it just slides them back in and out. Yeah, it's great for presenting. But anyways, we're getting away from the topic here.
If nothing else, we just created 2 shorts that we should probably chip and toss out on the tube channel. So, yeah. All right, let's get focused. So we've got till roughly top of the hour. I can go a little longer, but essentially what we want to do is create a new application and use generative AI to take a brief description, let's say, and generate back a title, which is what we did yesterday, and that's how we got a title for today. But we want to have something that we can use and make available and become part of potentially a set of tools that you might use to build out some content for the stream, because this is one of a few ideas that we've got kind of going on. So let's do this. Let's open up our window here. Let's clear this. Where are we? Let's secret repos. And let's do let's make a new directory and call it not transfers. What do we TDTS? Let's just do that. Cool. All right, so now we've got our space. We want to create so we're just going to do this really simply now. We're just going to do this as a console application, right? So let's say .NET New console, and let's call this stop me as we go through this, because me, I'll just keep going and not talk.
Yeah, you're just making a console app and telling it, put it in a folder called Content Generator. Yep.
Let's go into that. And
just for people who maybe are new to .NET New, if he would have just done .NET New console, it would have worked, but it would have put the app right there in the root folder, it would have called it TDTS Gen AI, which might be what you want. It just depends. So a new git ignore file. Yep.
Which is the other thing I always do. And then let's just go ahead and do get in it and make it finished. There we go. So now we've got a starting place for everything. From here, I'm just going to do code dot, and that'll open up Visual Studio Code. Beautiful. We'll zoom in 1 or 2, which I'm sure looks great at home, but looks really uncomfortable here. So we'll close this. But I've got what's interesting is everything that we just did with those commands has created a few things for us, right? So it created a project, the CS project, because it's there. But because I've got, I believe it's because I have DevKit installed, which was recently updated with a whole bunch of great features inside of there as well. I think it just came out, last week. But basically, that's giving me some additional pieces inside of my project. So that's why I have a solution here as well, preparing me if I was to open this up in Visual Studio where I would need that. But for right now, we're just going to focus on the project, make sure it gave me, so it gave us the right .NET 9, which is perfect, and a git ignore. Cool. And we've got the nice new streamlined version of console as well in the programs file. So good stuff.
Yeah. All right.
A couple things we need to think about is Um, we know we want to. Oh, let's just jump right on into here into our line. And what I'm trying to do a lot more recently is this open chat. So this is the new edit window for chat, right? So this is the classic, hey, there's chats, right? And we're able to kind of see that with Copilot and ask questions. But now we've got the ability to, hey, I've got a working set of files here. In this case, is my program file that I'm going to use, and I've got essentially I can edit the files in my workspace. So here, maybe I might want to type in generate code to prompt the user for a so now it's going to think about that. Kind of play back what I said, spelling prompt the right way,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially giving this. And I can modify, I can redo, I can do those. I can change things around. But that looks pretty good to start. And why am I getting the yellow squiggle? Because it could be possibly null. That's fine. We're just going to let that go. Although I think,
Yeah, they just want it to be a nullable string.
yep. So nice. So we can check that and do that later. So I don't know. I've been playing around a lot with that and using it as a way to kind of ask and modify my code. But in the end, we now get a place for us to get a brief description and a place for us to get a value back from that. And that value that we get back, it's not going to be a chat like we're doing on the left here with GitHub Copilot. We're just going to send that off to a large language model or a frontier model, as they call them, and say, here's the text, but we need to tell it what to do with that text when we send it over. And you may have seen this. We've done this before, but we're going to include something called promptee. And what promptee gives us is just a way to define what it is that we're, how the LLM should behave. So in this case, this is going to be called title prompts. And I'm going to come here. I'm going to rename this.
Now, was there an extension you have installed that has promptee ready to go?
Good call out. Boom.
And it's just
promptee. Yep, just promptee. This is the one you'll want to look for. I know there's actually a NuGet package that is not what you want. So I would basically say start here and it's only available for Visual Studio Code. So
okay.
The fall on Visual Studio, it's not there. So yeah, so that's what I recommend. We'll close that. We'll go back to our promptee. Promptee. And inside of here, the other thing we'll do is we'll turn word wrap on so we can get those. And that was just Control-Shift-P. And then I would type in word wrap, but I use it a lot. So it's kind of sitting right there for me. So prompt to generate, so I'm not going to worry about any of this stuff for right now, but what I am going to focus on is this down here. Why not, right? So, and then because Copilot is turned on, Copilot is saying, well, we can continue offering suggestions on what might need to go in here for the system prompt. So,
okay,
I don't think we want to include that, but basically maybe do something that is more descriptive of the title. Maybe the title should be 4 to 6 words. What else should it be? Watch the show. Perfect. Okay. So that's what a title is, and then I'm going to
What
say
does the title? I guess I don't. The title should also catch the use. Is it supposed to be user or something else? I'm just not sure.
Good job. Yep. Nope.
That one I wasn't sure about. I was like, okay.
So maybe, yeah.
Meaningful
no,
isn't
catch.
Meaningful. It'll probably get. It's not
right.
Attract. Okay.
Yeah. I'm playing with this. This is,
Yeah.
It may not always, you can certainly modify this, and we might provide for.
Okay. So this
Now we're getting some options, right?
This portion of the prompty template it's just as if we went into as if we included it as part of just like talking with ChatGPT or something.
Exactly.
But it's a little bit more
Now,
structured. It's a little more structured than that. Where, okay.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And while you might do this with ChatGPT in that text box where you start the conversation, we're doing this in what's called the system prompt. So that every time a conversation happens with an LLM, it includes that system bit, so we don't have to retype it. So that's part of the reason why we include it here. It also, because you certainly could do that, right? You could launch the free version of any of the chat services and say, "Hey, help me do this," and they'll very happily give you back what you've asked for in those sentences here, essentially. But that, I think, is all we need right now. I'm going to change this one to be brief description. Okay, and we're kind of ready to go. What I do want to do is, so that's prompty sitting here. What I want, nope, off of this. So I want to go ahead and add some new code so that we can talk to our semantic kernel service and be able to have the interaction happen. So I do this. I get a separate CS class that is here, and it included some stuff, but instead of, it kind of did it almost like it's in a console, right? Because it's actually looking at it's actually got console written in here, and it's a little confused, basically. So what I want to do is say, hey, can I take this this file, and I don't need to highlight it, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to say, hey, this is the file that we're working with in our working set. I'm going to say,
Okay, so this is interesting. And so Prompty, it looked to me like Prompty had, when you right-clicked on the Prompty file, the extension was offering you, it was kind of near the bottom of our screen, multiple ways for it to generate code. And you chose semantic kernel, but it looked like there were some other methods. And I don't mean the C# term, but there were other ways that it said, hey, I'll produce LangChain code, I'll produce prompt flow code. But in the particular case of semantic kernel, it created for you what looks to me like a console app. Like you could run that console app if it was your program CS, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
If it was, I could do that. I could take that and drag it over. And what I want to do is kind of switch things up a little bit and make it so that it's a little more like you would expect in your application.
Right. So what's interesting to me now is, and this is here where, as long as hopefully this is okay, is this is where I come in to say these are the things that I don't think about doing, even though Copilot's been around for a while. Copilot Chat has been around for a while. And if you're like me and you're watching the show and you say, I know this stuff exists, and yeah, sure, I've used it now and then, but it's not part of my workflow. What's interesting here is to see that you reached for it to say, here, why don't you turn this into a class that I could use instead of it being a top level console app?
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes a little, I mean, you almost have to see somebody do it before the light bulb goes on and say, oh,
yeah,
that's awesome.
No,
I'm
eager to see what it does here.
Me too, because it could go terribly wrong as well. So, but usually it's pretty good. So the cool thing though is it will bring it in and it will give me the option to look at it, review it, be that, the seasoned developer who understands what that impact's going to be to your code, and say, yeah, it's good, or it's good, but I know I've got to change a few things here and there. So let's see what I do this, because it's going to think about it. And it gives you, I'm sure there's a term for this view where you see the stuff that got deleted.
Yeah, it's like a diff view. Yeah.
There you go.
It's like that. I mean,
Totally. So what's great though is, so I could go and review and bring in each one of those pieces, but I think it looks pretty good. I'm just going to go ahead and say accept, and it'll accept everything, which is awesome. And I now have a title class service, or a title service with a bunch of properties in there. And there's my constructor, which is where I want it, right? I want my kernel to be created right at the beginning. And then I also have my method to generate the title, where it's going to take in our string of question. In this case, I want to go ahead and do this. Yep. So this is, I want to rename this. And as I rename it, I'm getting some IntelliSense from Copilot as well, or some suggestions from Copilot about how I might give it a different name. But I know this one I want to be brief description, because that's kind of what it is. And that changes that there. And then I also need to do the same thing here, because in the promptee, we left the curly braces that we are injecting as brief description. So if I go back and look,
yeah, it was like a template
I put here.
Yeah. Okay.
So whatever is there at 22 has to be the same thing that is here on the left side in 25.
Okay.
Cool.
Now,
so we do have some things that are still kind of red squiggles, and part of it is because, so I mean, changing it from just some straight console text to a class, not bad, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I wondered if you were going to ask Copilot, because I think we know what's missing here. At least I have an idea, but I wonder if it knows what's missing.
So we can do this, and I could do something where I right click on, because it's got the squiggles, and I can ask Copilot, and I can say fix.
Okay.
It's not defined or imported. Need to replace it with a dictionary to pass the arguments. Okay.
Because I'm thinking more of that. That's the problem. Is that there's a package to be brought into the project still. And so, okay.
And it's actually giving me the code. And what's awesome now is I have this.
Oh yeah. Straight into the terminal.
Maybe.
Eventually, yeah.
Okay.
And it did both of them. So that's what I was wondering is that, it was clear to me that there was a NuGet package missing, or two apparently. But first of all, I wouldn't have known there was two. I probably would have tried semantic kernel and then scratched my head a little bit more. But
yeah, and it's making us, an assumption that we want the OpenAI connector, which we kind of, we're not using the OpenAI service. We're going to be using. I'm going to try and use GitHub for this one and see how that goes. I have not tried doing that yet, but so that's cool. So I can close this. Go ahead.
In order for you to use this, there's still some work to do, such as you would have to have, as is, you'd have to have a deployment in the OpenAI service that matches up with what's passed in for deployment, passed in for endpoint, and so on.
Right.
Okay. All right.
At least for if we were going to, because there are the ability to talk directly to OpenAI, the service, and use their capabilities. I would probably use Azure OpenAI as one option because they're different, right? There's OpenAI, the actual company, and they have their
Yeah.
services that you can use, and then there's
Right.
Azure OpenAI, the service, which has similar capabilities and 1,800 models. So like they have a ton more models over there as well. And that's either way, it has set me up. The prompt decode kind of set me up with that Azure OpenAI chat completion bit.
Right.
I'm going to use that, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a different endpoint in that I want it to be the endpoint that the GitHub models is in, which is a more globally accessible as opposed to one available in my subscription. So we'll talk about that in a second. But at least for this here, cool, that doesn't show up. Okay. There is this. So, and no extension is possible for that. So that is because, and this is where we get into NuGet. Come on. What? No, stop.
Yeah, they still put that B next to the N on the keyboard. You know, I've done that a million times. I've gone to boogit.org. I'm actually not 100% sure what's there. I'll be honest. I really don't know. And I'm not sure that we want to find out. But I've typed that a million times at the command line just because it's right next to the N. So interesting here. Okay. So at this point now, yeah. Well, what I was going to say was you installed the Prompty extension, which was enough for Visual Studio Code to work with you, or at least it gave you the tools and the in-editor tooling for you to work with those files. But your project doesn't know what the heck Prompty is, like at all.
Exactly.
So,
and some of the the only thing the only thing in my project that really needs to know what Prompty is my is the semantic kernel, because that's the only place where that's going to come into where I'm going to need to use that file, and that's why it had that line in there around create function from a Prompty file. Well, that is still technically an alpha feature, right? So that means that if we look here and I look at the Prompty bit that is certainly available to semantic kernel, it means I'm going to have to include the alpha version of this, and then also include the alpha version of the Prompty core, essentially. So those are things that I want to add in as well. So if I take, I go back to here to, I think it's this one. Cool. All right. Go back to here, launch into this, do .NET add package, and I may get IntelliSense from trying this previously, but that
I think it was .prompty. Yeah.
There we go. Using the alpha version of that, and it's actually, I think it's 30. That says 30, and even
sure
after,
that might be a little old. It's so there's a 37 apparently.
17 hours ago.
Look at that. So it must be ready.
So, we got to try it.
Yeah.
So let's do this. Bring this back up.
Now, because this is still classed as a pre-release in NuGet, not including the version, I think, I'm not 100% sure about this. I think it does nothing because it says, I think, I'm pretty sure that the .NET add package doesn't add packages that are in a pre-release state unless you kind of explicitly ask for it. I could be wrong,
Exactly.
but I think that's
Nope.
true. Yeah.
You're right. I'll show this on the Prompty one because the Prompty one is only in alpha.
Okay.
As we go in and bring that one up, right? The only alpha releases. So what I'll do is I'll just take this, I'll copy this.
Yeah.
So you don't have to see my typing. And then do this and then paste it and then not
Right.
include
We'll
the
get rid of
version.
the.
I think it's going to say it can't find it.
No stable
Yeah,
versions
no stable
available.
versions,
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So
Now it'll pick
yeah.
if you do -- pre-release, then it'll take it. But it's essentially
So we
making
don't
sure
have
that
to know the version.
yeah, but I feel like it's saying, okay, I want to make sure you understand you're getting pre-release here. Which is fine. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So there it goes. There we go. Awesome.
So now we're in.
And now our CS project's
ahead.
got all these cool packages in it now, which is really neat, right? So
yeah, the important bits, and it's still not happy, but now it's not happy for a different reason, right? Whereas before it was a reference that was gone. You can see that we've got, our kernel references and our semantic kernel references are all taken care of, but now it's not unhappy. It's unhappy for a different reason, and that's because we've got an experimental version in the alpha of semantic kernel, and we want to basically, much like we were aware around the pre-release install, being aware that, hey, we get you want to use this, but we either need to include one of those pragma references in here to make sure that know that you're taking on the risk. And this one is semantic kernel exp for experiment feature 0040. And then that warning now goes away.
Cool.
And if I do home, boom, and then warning restore. So in case I was to use it somewhere else and not be aware of it. Okay. We're going to return a result. That result might be, I guess it could be null. Well, I would have to do that. Invoke. It's a task of string, right?
So I think you can say, I think the generic can be string. I think that invoke async generic, am I right that could be a nullable string and you could leave it as var?
Gotcha.
Not that what you're doing is wrong. It's just, I'm curious here from a language perspective.
Yeah.
And
Still not happy.
Yeah, it's still saying the result might be null. Now, is that also because when you look at our method declaration, we're saying that we're returning a string that's not nullable, at least. I mean, obviously strings are nullable, but once you turn on nullable references, that's when you start to get the complaining from the compiler. So I feel like on line 21, if that goes to string ? Maybe it all goes away.
This one here.
Yeah. There we go.
Call. Yeah, so you've got to kind of carry it forward all the way through.
Yeah, I think you
maybe not here.
Could. Well, that's true, right? Because invoke async, it could still return, and the string can still return null. That's just the legacy of C#. So, right. But you're putting it into a nullable string, so it's saying, okay,
I'll let you do it.
I'll let you do it if you want to. I mean, we got rid of the warnings, which I do like to do. I generally do try to, in fact, if the project is my own, I may have said this on the show before, if the project's my own and I don't feel like I'm going to frustrate a lot of people, I like to turn on warnings as errors just so that I get them. I try to get them early. This is my experience. I don't know how you've seen it, Rich, but if you wait for your project to get to 212 warnings, then you're never going to fix it as a team. Nope. Never going to fix it. They're just going to keep growing, and
it is definitely good thoughts to think about them early, right? Because once there is some number or some threshold, and they're like, all right, they're just warnings.
I know. Yeah. Now they're just warnings.
It's been running forever. So
So I started, one of the languages I cut my teeth on was C.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I had the privilege of working with some old timer developers who coded with switches and key punch, and I honestly always used to say I think those programmers were heroes. To the tooling, to call it tooling is crazy, but
Yeah.
certainly the attitude among them was always, they're just warnings. And I think it's because, you know, that was the legacy of programming at the time in languages like Pascal and C and so on. It's just a warning. It's not a big deal, you know, and
Yeah.
so.
And given, you know, some of the things they had to go through to even get it, you know, things to compile and things
Uh-huh.
to build
Yeah,
back then,
sure.
right? And run just once, you know, oh, okay, it's just a warning, we can go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a different time. Like, for
Oh
example,
yeah.
if you had a number, an integer of a certain size, and this line of code was going to demote it to be like a 1 byte number instead of a 2 byte number, something that you actually paid attention to back then. If you understood the language's built-in features and built-in rules for promotion and demotion, that was something as a programmer that you were proud of. You were proud that you knew this line of code was safe. And so when the
Mm-hmm.
warning came up to say, hey, you know, you're demoting this variable, you'd say like, yeah, I know that, right? And you
Fine.
were proud of that code. You were proud of that efficiency, the fact that you knew that this was a safe thing to do. But today, I think the modern thinking in programming is be explicit in the code. If you intend for something to happen, make sure the next developer knows that you intended it, even if you go so far as to just put a comment, but even if, you know, or clear warnings or do all those things. So it's just, you know,
Yeah.
we live in a different age where the code that we write is not necessarily the code that I'm going to be working on. It's for the next person too.
That's true. That's true. That's kind of how we should be thinking about it. So
Yeah, it's
um
just a different time. I remember specifically even in college that I had a professor that actually gave you uh, bonus points for what he called elegance in the code, which was, and today we would call it lack of readability, is what we would have called it. But
yeah.
he thought it was cool. Like, oh, look at that! You know, you got it all on one line, and yeah,
It shortened things up and it saved space because that was expensive back then.
yeah.
Cool.
So what do we have? What do you think is next? Do you think it's ready to go? And
No, because we have our
okay,
console or our program part of the console. Now we've got to call that class and
yep,
inject
okay.
the description and do those kind of things, right? So let me just make sure because I don't think is there anything. Well, the constructor wants that. I don't necessarily need all of those. So here's what I'm thinking. We can do dependency injection and put this and put the configuration values or just put configuration object in here. One way. Way two is inject those individual components or inject the class that has those components and do the configuration out here at the prompt.
Right. Now, in the code, you're using the Azure AI Open Completion. Is that semantic kernel going to take care of the fact that it's GitHub models? You don't have to
I
change
think
that.
so.
Okay.
And here's why I'm going down this path that way. So if we go over, that's a good question. And one we were going to hit anyway, so this is perfect. So if we look at the GitHub models, and if we go in and say, hey, let's select the model, and we're using, you know, GPT-4o, that's fine, doesn't matter. But we look at the code, and we look at the code here, and let me zoom in a little bit the browser way so that I can still navigate. This part here is the bit that has the URL. So in this case, instead of saying whatever the name of my Azure OpenAI instance is .ai.azure.com, we're using this generic one as a way to connect to it. So my thinking is I could take this and the GitHub token. So this would be the the URL. This would be the API key. This is what we're replacing on the other side, but we'll use it with basically make an Azure credential out of it, and then the deployment, which is essentially this model, right? So we kind of need those three things. So that's my thought, is that we can do that and make that work. So with that, why don't I just take these, copy them, and instead of,
I mean, I suppose if you just want to see it work, we can just
yep,
yeah, you can just get this stuff going, right?
yeah,
And then we could always back that back out and make it, well, we're solving the problem that we have, right? Instead of trying to be fancy about it. So which is good. Ah, yes. We had this issue once before where
we did.
where there's a key you have to get from GitHub, and as always, we have to protect that. And so I suspect we are about to add user secrets to this app.
We could, except
Oh, you already, unless you already have it in an environment variable. Yeah, I forgot about that whole odyssey. Yeah.
So it's still there, and I
Cool.
checked that before the show, so I don't have to look at it again. It
Cool,
is still
cool.
there. So this should, I believe, this will give us what we need. Now it's not happy about
Yeah.
the key.
It's
because the key
complaining
should be a
that
string.
it might reach out to environment and not find it. That's all it's saying.
Yeah.
And because we're in nullable references, it's saying, it might reach out to, I might reach out to environment and not find it, but you don't think we're going to, that's going to happen. So we should be fine. It's just
so,
warnings.
Yeah.
It's
Like
just,
we're saying, they're just warnings.
it's just a warning.
The thing that makes this a little interesting is that there is no. Let me do this. So I'll highlight this, and we'll bring up our chat window.
Oh, I
again,
see.
And just say, hey.
Now, GitHub Copilot.
Oh. Okay. Yeah.
GitHub Copilot. How up to date is it? If you know. Meaning you ask a question about something that came out last week.
Yeah. So while it is using that model, it can gather additional information to ground it with. So
Okay.
your code, other sources to kind of, documentation, things of that nature. So to bring that in and be able to make a response.
Okay.
So
yeah, I was just wondering.
Do a little bit of kind of pre-processing to generate the right.
So your concern here is that method, add Azure OpenAI chat completion, isn't because it was complaining about something else, or
because it didn't like the key, and
okay. I see.
If I do this, is there a version of this where I can supply that? There you go, core token credential. So I need a deployment name, which we have. I have an endpoint, and I want to be able to put essentially the token credentials inside of here. Everything else is optional.
Okay.
You can see there, right? Because it's an optional string, optional. Okay. So
right.
What I need to do now is, instead of the key.
Right. You got to create a credential out of that, right?
Yeah. Let me see.
And is that just something you knew up from a string?
I think so. Let me just double check.
Okay.
I should type that better. Underscore key as the value token.
Okay, that's
Kind of
cool.
likes it. Let's
Yeah.
accept it. And what's it complaining about? Type your namespace could not be found. Are you missing a directive? The NuGet package is now needed. Azure key credential. Azure Core. Okay. Oh no. No, don't. Why? That's interesting.
Yeah, that one
Okay,
it didn't
that
pick
one.
up to. Although I think you did it in a different way. I think when you tried to solve the problem in the editor, it seemed to know what it was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so you've done that. And then, yep, using Azure. Okay.
Cool.
And
Close this
yet,
down. Looks like we're getting close.
yeah.
Cannot implicitly convert. Interesting.
So, hold on. Did it do it?
It's not a subclass, so you should use
Yeah, but
Azure key credential directly without assigning it to a token credential.
right. So that variable that I think it's asking you to change on line 12, that was a token
Yeah.
credential just a second ago.
Okay. So let's see if doing that makes this. Okay, but that's not the method we want. We want this one.
So I don't know
And
if
that's
you
the
have to say
problem. So it
new
is token
token
credentials.
credential. I don't know.
Yeah. It is not. So if I come out to here, right, what does this need to be? Credentials. Credentials. So it could be any token credentials. Default Azure credential, managed identity credential. But this thing wants it to be a string. That doesn't make any sense. Hang on, let's maybe we should save this and build it and see what see if that changes the error. What do we call this one? Content. And pass those. Yeah, it's not liking that. Interesting. Okay. How we doing? We're almost at the end. Hmm. Well, let's do this. I'll ask one last thing, and if it doesn't work, then we'll switch to the Azure OpenAI instance that I have.
Is what GitHub models giving you an API key or a credential?
So from the example from GitHub, it's giving me an access token, a personal access token, and then what they're doing is they are taking that token and They're making it the API key? I thought we converted it to. Oh, because that's this. I really thought we were taking that credential.
Yeah, but they used
Yeah,
a
we just
different
passed it in.
class there. They used chat client, which
They are, yeah.
that was taking us
But I
down a
mean,
whole different path. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if Azure OpenAI chat completion takes the API key as one of its options. I just don't know. When I'm looking at other code, I see somebody who just said kernel.createbuilder.add Azure OpenAI chat completion, and they just dropped in the deployment name, the endpoint, and the API key. So
the key is
I
it
don't
is.
know. Yeah.
Okay. We can try it.
But I feel like we did try that. I don't remember now. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, we also so when we used the GitHub model before, we also didn't use semantic kernel, which may be
Right.
what's making the slight difference here. So
So I don't know if you can just drop the key in. I feel like we
Yeah.
just tried this though.
Well, we didn't run it. We thought it was gonna be an issue.
Well, it's not complaining about it. Okay.
No.
Now,
So
if you hover over the method, what method did it pick? Which overload did it pick? It picked one that takes deployment name, endpoint, and API key. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's try this. I'm up for it. C#. Huh?
I didn't see.
Fine. It's making a new launchy. Oh, wait a minute. This is gonna fail. And not for that reason. I forgot to do something. So let's stop this. In item group.
Is this to include the prompty file?
Yeah.
So you're basically adding it as a piece of build output or something like that?
Exactly. Yeah, I think it goes something like, not a project reference, but none. Yeah, copy the output directory, and it's title dot prompty. And save, and then so we can see that right now we've got nothing in here from any of those. And then if I go ahead and do we've stopped that terminal. Oh, 'cause it didn't pass, huh? None tag does not match the item. Oh, shoot. Okay. Cool. That succeeded. And what we should have down here under title, there we go. We now have our title prompty.
Okay.
Which we didn't have before. So that's the important part. Okay. And if you're storing the prompty in another file, like maybe you have a prompts folder and you've got those things in, then you have to assemble where this location is if it's not in the root. So you're going to have to say, create essentially the directory for how to find this if you're not keeping it at the root of your bin, because that's where it starts. All right. Boom, boom. So we're back to here. Brief description of what you want for the show. A show about right? So hopefully that's what we'll be doing next time. What happened?
Well, it exited. I don't know that. I don't know what the rest of our code does.
Because we didn't do anything with the result.
Okay.
All right. So string brief description. Oh, we didn't call it, which is
Yeah.
why it didn't fail. Okay. Um, Thank you for helping me out. Brief description. That's fine.
And then it's even ready to go. All right.
Cool. All right. One last thing. Control dot read line so it doesn't go anywhere.
Okay.
And there we go. Okay. Save. Build and run.
So environment variable, Azure OpenAI endpoint not found.
We weren't asking it to. It was. Oh, wait a minute. Endpoint. Maybe it was trying to find it via the environment variable because it didn't like that value.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. Take me off screen.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
Um,
There we go.
Excellent. So if we come over to think. If I do .NET, and you can't see this, but this if I do .NET user secrets, I should be able to list them, right? Maybe. There we go. Never mind. I got them. Okay. And boop. Copy. I'm just going to take them and put them in the other project so that they exist over there.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't. I don't know
You
why
can see what I'm
it's.
doing. That's fine. So here's what I did. I had a previous project that I talked to OpenAI for another purpose, and I had stored things as user secrets. I'm just going over there and listing out those user secrets, copying them over into this project so that I have them, and making a region so that I can hide all of that. Cool. And hopefully this region will collapse, which it does. Let me just do one quick check. Deployment. Yep. All good. All right. Save it. You can come back to me now.
Okay.
Spell none of the references. Fine. Debug console. Cool. We're sitting here. And that's redundant. All right. Let's see what it says. Darn. Environment variable blah was still not found.
Yeah,
It really
well,
doesn't make
I didn't
sense.
see what the exception was.
Just basically that um, it's still trying to find an environment variable for OpenAI endpoint, and I'm not sure
Hmm.
why it's doing that. I mean, I can give it one if that's what it wants.
Unless create function from prompty file, does it go outside of? I don't know what it does.
I mean, at that point, it's taking the kernel that we created here
Oh, I
and
see. Okay.
trying to talk to
That's what that kernel
essentially,
arguments was.
yeah. Well, the kernel arguments is the variable that
Well,
we're passing in.
except that we
Yeah.
newed it up. So what happened to the rest of it? See
What happened to the
kernel.create
rest of it?
builder. Okay,
Sorry.
so when we go to the line of code that says create function from prompty file,
Yep, down here.
kernel arguments is newed up there, but then I don't think we do anything with it.
No, but we do a build, right? So now that object is here. That object persists for this
Okay.
class.
Okay.
Um, and you're better at the C# stuff than I am. I mean, that's
Well,
how I read it.
so generate title creates a kernel arguments object. Okay, and then invoke async kernel and kernel arguments. I don't know. I don't know.
We're not awaiting it. Does it need that?
I don't think so.
I mean, the await's down here. There we go.
Yeah.
Never mind. And it's happening here. Hmm. Um. um Tell you what. Let me do this real quick. One sec. Right back.
Okay.
And oop. All right. So this is one I did yesterday. And I will see how we did this. So it's the same. Yeah. Kernel. Fine. Create prompt from prompty. And as I moused over them in the other one that was running, it does give me um, a value for that and a value for the endpoint.
Right.
So I'm not sure why it thinks it needs to find an Azure OpenAI endpoint from the service.
So I don't know what the differences are in the other code yet, if anything.
I could try. Yeah. So
Just so this code.
this doesn't, line 22 doesn't matter because we're not using credential. So it's really what's going on at 23 with kernel, create builder, and then add Azure OpenAI chat completion using a deployment, an endpoint, and a key, and then build it all out. And well, let's just make sure that the program, this is mine. This is the one I did yesterday. So let's get rid of this and close this and zoom in a bunch. Cool. It's kernel. Okay. No, that should make a difference because we're not using it. we get to here. This is the one
Does
that's failing.
is it struggling to find the prompty file path, and we're getting a weird exception? I don't know. That doesn't make sense. I guess
No,
the
'cause
exception would
it's
tell us.
yeah, because there is a different exception that shows up when the path is bad.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then, which is why I had to do all this to get it to find the right place where the file got placed. Maybe over here, and you let me know how much time you have. Like if you got a drop or whatever.
Right.
Let's do this. There was I forget what it is in Studio or in Code to
To do what?
surround it.
Oh. If you want to comment it, or
If I want to try.
oh, okay.
Well. Oh, this. Okay. I gotta get rid of this. And that's fine. Okay. Maybe we can get a better sense of what's going on. Wonder. I don't need those because we're not doing the. We don't need this now. That. All right. Well, instead of debugging this, let's just do this.
Okay.
So it's a same. It looks like the same exact code. There is something in there that is not wanting to. I think the only difference is we didn't tell it to. Look at the title prompty. Virtual assistant. Word wrap.
Oh. Well, now
Yeah.
I know. Go back to the prompty file in your other project real quick. So the prompty file is saying that you're using Azure OpenAI, and that it wants, and that it's like overriding everything you're doing. Now, I don't know if you can change that prompty file type to GitHub Models, but why don't we use your other project first to see it work? Because I feel like the difference between these two projects is this one used an OpenAI deployment, right?
Yeah.
And what you were trying to do.
They both
Oh,
are now because we switched it up to use
yeah.
OpenAI or Azure
What you were
OpenAI.
trying to do in the other project was use GitHub models, and I wonder if we have to switch up the prompty file so that it doesn't try to, override what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do here. It worked.
Okay.
And although this says this, it's still, I mean, maybe it's the way I'm overriding the endpoint with the configuration values. Because, what's the hierarchy of?
Well, when you added Azure OpenAI endpoint to environment, is it in this environment and not in the one sitting in the other Visual Studio Code instance? I don't know
It
for
is
sure.
actually, yeah, it's only in this environment. It's in the user secrets for this project.
Okay.
It's not, it's a user. So it's
You didn't
.NET
put it in
user
environment.
secrets.
You put it in user secret. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah,
not being familiar with prompty. I don't know in prompty when you say env, I don't know what it's doing there. I'm not saying that it's good or bad. Maybe like you said, there's an
Right.
order to it where it says, okay, well, let me look in. Well, I'm not sure.
Because that exists in.
You don't want to show the secrets. Yeah.
No, I'm not. But I'm going to
Because you've got a key in there.
Yeah. Although it's a different it's a different value, that configuration. Interesting. Because it's not Azure _ OpenAI _ endpoint. It's
No, that's whatever you called it in
hierarchy.
your user secret. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know enough about prompty to know what it does when you use that templating there, environment Azure
Yeah.
OpenAI endpoint. Does prompty say, look, I'll look in your configuration as well? I don't know.
And I'm wondering if I
But
can basically say don't look here.
yeah.
I don't know.
Because on this particular version of the app, you originally were trying to use GitHub models, but now I think it's just how do you get it to work?
Yeah.
And so it works. And so prompty was looking for that answer.
Yeah. But it's nice to
Now
know
again,
that when
I
you
don't
need it,
know
you don't
enough
have to put
about
it
it.
there.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
enough about it, but I
And that's gotta be,
suppose yeah.
Well, it's got to be in the method that we have here that says, create
Right.
the function from the prompty
Yeah.
file.
Yeah, it's just doing what the prompty file says, and it says, okay, go get this configuration. It's like, oh, but that doesn't exist, so it just blows up.
Interesting.
Now, this version of the app, you got 5 results because your prompts was probably slightly different.
Yeah. So in this one, I asked it to give me 5 suggestions. And I think in the other one, it was kind of meant to be this back and forth of make a suggestion, no, it needs to be more this, what have you. Okay.
All right.
That's a good thing to know.
So today, where we sit right now, is both apps are using an Azure OpenAI deployment of yours. And it would be interesting to find out if GitHub models could be used with the different light. You're trying to use semantic kernel. You're trying to use prompty. Like, do they all mesh together?
Right. And they should. I mean, I have a feeling that what I'm going to do after this is swap the variables back and point to GitHub models and see if that, getting rid of that extra bit of text inside of the prompty makes a difference.
Right.
Interesting. But yeah, so we have a title for the next one.
Yeah.
Just got to choose one.
I think earlier you used the term that's showing up there. You used the term like a frontier model. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I didn't know what that
So
meant for sure.
That's what I've heard a lot. So it's referring to the latest generative AI models. And I don't have the exact term for it, unfortunately, but we can do this.
Oh, look at that.
I obviously, yeah.
Okay, I see. So, for example, a model like a GPT model, there's something to it. It means that it's the latest, but it also means that it's the latest in its class or in what it's trying to do. Maybe.
Yeah, but it covers a wide. So I think it's the more generic term also of it doesn't necessarily have to be a large language model. It could be a small language model. It could be some of the reinforced learning models that are happening on the our with DeepSeek and things like that. So it's meant to cover across all of those. At least that's how I've heard heard it used in context.
Yeah, it was just a term I heard you use earlier, and I wasn't sure if it had a meaning. So, and there it is, a whole understanding frontier models in AI post that somebody wrote for LinkedIn. So, okay,
yes.
Cool. All right, so there's little bits and pieces to put together, like depending on what you're using, it seems, and also there's a lot of great tooling, but still learning like what it all does. I feel like the point of Prompty, because I've seen it before. I remember when it was demonstrated on stage a couple years ago, if I recall correctly. I feel like the point of it is to say, like, this text file is where you can manage prompts instead of you trying to write your own thing or put it right in the code. Yeah. So
it's something that you could give over to a business person, or I mean, maybe not so much a business person, but like a data scientist type, and say, well, this is how the model should behave, and here's where you're injecting things you might research or things that whatever it is the user asks, and now go ahead and put it in your application so that it works, and it gets checked in along with the rest of the code. So, which is why I'm not a fan of having the extra bits of stuff at the top, but
yeah, that's very much that reminds me very much of Front Matter in like in like Jekyll or other templating engines. And maybe that's a standard. I admit that I'm not sure if that templating is based on another standard that because everything that builds on top of each other, I got to the Jekyll level. I don't know what's below that. So
right.
All right.
And
cool.
Don't get me wrong, I like Prompty. I think it's a great way to pull all that content together for the prompt and be able to visualize it in a document, right? Not in my code. But yeah, I mean, there's just some nuances to it that we're still figuring out, because it is still, at least right now, I guess it's still in the beta phase. So
yeah, it says Prompty on their GitHub repo. It says Prompty is supported by popular orchestration frameworks, PromptFlow, LangChain, semantic kernels. So interesting to understand there.
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, what I think we'll do real quick before we sign off, if you got another minute here, is I said earlier something about how we about elegant code and code that's unreadable and so on. It reminded me of one of my favorite quotes of all time by Mr. Harold Abelson, who wrote a classic, Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs. This book is an absolute classic. an all-time classic about writing computer software at a time that I will tell you, I vaguely remember a time when I think programmers took just as much pride in the elegance, or the term elegance was often used, but even in the cryptic nature of the code, like it must be superior because nobody can possibly figure out what it does. And he wrote this quote: programs must be written for people to read and only incidentally for machines to execute. And,
Nice.
I feel like at the time this may have ruffled some feathers, but now I feel like his point of view is well received. And so I wanted to find that quote, and it reminded me that MIT has this whole section of what they call open courseware. And they took his lectures, as it says here, as taught in spring of 2005. Although I'll tell you, that little tube TV makes me wonder. But I've watched this lecture
in 2005.
Yeah, I've watched this lecture. It's on YouTube. The whole thing's on YouTube, and this must have been, I presume that this must have been kind of like the Intro 101 course. I know it says overview and introduction to Lisp. I don't know what the course was. I guess, maybe the course was structure and interpretation of computer programs, but I really got the sense that this was the welcome to your undergrad computer science. You're going to sit and listen to him. And he starts off by saying, we're going to talk about computer science, and then immediately crosses the words out and says, here's what we really do in computer science. And I think, if I remember correctly, what he writes out is what we really do is we define premeditated processes. He's like, that's what we really actually are doing. It has nothing to do with computers, and it sure as heck isn't a science. and he goes on to basically explain that we are teaching, we are writing the logic, we're writing the process for which a computer will execute. And cool. I loved this video, and every once in a while I think about it. And if you want to see, some I don't know when this was. I for some reason I don't want to believe it was 2005. I feel like why does it feel very 80s to me? But
interesting.
So, anyways,
Cool.
I'll include a link in the show notes on YouTube. But I know we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Hopefully you've had a good morning with us here on Thursday, February 13th, and it's 2025 already, believe it or not. And so I don't really have much else. Thanks for walking us through. Yeah, thanks for walking us through getting some of the trials and tribulations of getting this stuff going. You had it going before, but then said, hey, let's try to get this working with GitHub models, which I think is really interesting as well. So we'll keep working with that. Maybe we can get some of this code posted on our GitHub repo as well.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Because there's not. Yeah, we can do that because we did a Git instance of it. So
yeah. All right. Well, let me get us out of here. For Rich, I'm Chris. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show.